If you buy an ounce of gold today and you hold it 100 years from now, you'll have 1 ounce of gold, and it won't have done anything for you in between.
Warren Buffett won't touch gold.
Okay, yeah.
You think he's wrong? Well, clearly you must.
I think he's making a big mistake. Yeah.
Physical gold, I go hug at night.
I hate gold. Gold is a religion.
The reason I like gold and silver, that's God's money.
Gold ist mysteriös und spaltet die Gemüter der großen Investorenlegenden. Die Meinungen über das gelbe Metall könnten gegensätzlicher kaum sein. Besonders in der aktuellen Krise wird Gold als sehr wichtig angesehen. In diesem Video wirst du erfahren, was die Befürworter und Gegner zu sagen haben. Viel Spaß!
I hate gold. Gold is a religion. There's some fundamental value to gold, but everything else, it's a collectible. I see gold and Bitcoin as being the same thing.
Well, hate is a strong word.
Okay.
So the miners too, all of gold, the whole gold spectrum.
Individually as people, I've heard they're great people. But as an investment, okay, you're right. Hate is not strong enough. Hate with extreme prejudice as an investment.
Oh gosh. Okay, so Bitcoin and gold on the same level for you.
They're both collectibles.
Okay.
The value is based off of supply and demand. And the good news about Bitcoin is there's a finite supply that'll ever be created. And the bad news about gold is they'll keep on mining more.
Well, Goldman Sachs says that we only have 20 years left of mineable gold.
Well, then in 20 years we could have another conversation.
So you don't see gold as money then?
No, I do not see it as an alternative to currency, no. Let's put it this way. I don't see people in Puerto Rico carrying around big bags of gold to try to save things. Let me say it one more time. Hate with extreme prejudice is not enough.
What is the difference between this and this? Why is this fake money and why is this real money?
It's always been that way. There was a man named the Rothschild. He says, you want to control people, you control their money. And that's why lesson number 1 in Rich Dad Poor Dad, rich don't work for money. Now, the reason I like gold and silver is because when you study money, what the dollar is always called counterparty risk to it. And the average guy goes, counterparty or what? A stock has counterparty risk to it. All money has counterparty risk. That means you got to trust somebody else. Like the counterparty risk of the dollar, the US dollar or any money, the yen or the peso, is you have to trust your government. If you trust your government, knock yourself out, man. Save all the money you can as a screw you. So the reason I like gold and silver, that's God's money. If you read my book, Fake Money, Fake Teachers, Fake Asset, gold and silver were here when the earth was formed. God is your counterparty. I'm not really religious, but I'm just making a point here. You know, I trust God, which means you add L to the word God, it spells gold. Oh my jeez, it's gold. Wake up. It's been that way for millions of years.
Yeah, we're not enthused about gold. People will go on eating and they'll go on drinking and doing various things. And we would not trade the ownership of those kind of assets for a hunk of yellow metal, which has very little real utility.
Yeah, if you have the opportunities of Berkshire Hathaway, averaged out, gold is a dumb investment.
If you buy an ounce of gold today and you hold it 100 years, you can go to it every day and you can coo to it and you can caress it and you can fondle it, and 100 years from now, you'll have 1 ounce of gold, and it won't have done anything for you in between. If you buy 100 acres of farmland, it will produce for you every year. You can use that money to buy more farmland. You can do all kinds of things. For 100 years, it'll produce things for you, and you still have 100 acres of farmland at the end of the 100 years. You could buy the Dow Jones Industrial Average for 66 at the start of 1900. Gold was then $20. At the end, it was 11,400. But you'd all gotten dividends for 100 years. So a productive asset of any kind, a decent productive asset, is going to kill a non-productive asset over time. Now, in any given 1-year period, 5-year period, any asset can outperform another asset. People may get a little irritated, but when you talk about gold, and of course that says something about their motivations for ownership. They want people to agree with them. They want everybody to get so scared they run to a cave with gold. And caves might be a better investment than gold. I mean, at least they're not producing more caves all the time. So they want people to be as afraid as they are, because that's what's going to produce an increase in prices.
I think gold should be a part of everybody's portfolio to some degree, because it diversifies the portfolio. It is the alternative money. We have a situation now where when you have too much debt leads to the printing of money to make it easier to service. So all of those things mean that some portion should be in gold.
Warren Buffett won't touch gold.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
You think he's wrong? Well, clearly you must.
I think he's making a big mistake. Yeah. Gold is like cash. It's an alternative version of cash. So over long term, it's not the best investment. Over long term, it's a little bit better than cash over long term. It is, however, when you're having a monetary crisis, when you have a fiat monetary system, and you have the need for money. Debt is a promise to deliver money. Right. So if you look at each of those devaluations that have taken place, March 1933, President Roosevelt closes the banks and then opens them and says you can get your money. And then they broke the link with gold. And so the history over that period of time is that money can be produced. Gold is somewhat limited. It's an alternative that should be part of everybody's portfolio.
If you owned all the gold in the world, you could have a cube that would be 67 or 68 feet on a side, and you could get a ladder and you could climb up on top of it, and you could say, I'm sitting on top of the world, and think you're king of the world. You could fondle it, you could polish it, you could do all these things with it, stare at it, but it isn't going to do anything. It's all you are doing when you buy that is that you're hoping that somebody else a year from now or 5 years from now will pay you more to own something that, again, can't do anything, but you're hoping that the person then thinks that somebody else will buy something 5 years later from him. In other words, you're betting on not just how scared people are now of paper money, you're betting on how much they think a year from now people will be scared 2 years from then on. Keynes described all of this, I think it was in chapter 12 of the General Theory, when he talked about this famous beauty contest where the game was not to pick out the most beautiful woman among the group, but the one that other people would think was the most beautiful woman.
And besides, it's something peculiar to buy an asset which only will really go up if the world really goes to hell. It doesn't strike me as a terribly rational thing to do.
In addition to this 67-foot cube, more gold is being produced every year. So you have to have buyers not only to offset sellers in the natural course of events, but you have to absorb something like $100 billion worth of added items of no utility. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, they dig it up out of the ground in South Africa and they ship it to the Federal Reserve in New York and they put it back in the ground. I mean, if you were watching this from Mars, you might think it was a little peculiar. I might mention that the value of that cube, all the gold in the world, is now valued at 1,500 plus, is about $8 trillion. And there are 1 billion acres roughly of farmland in the United States. That's a little over 1.5 million square miles. And that's valued at something over 2 trillion. So you could own all of the farmland in the United States, every bit of it. And you could own 10 ExxonMobils and you could stick $1 trillion or so in your pocket for walking around money. And you could have your choice of that or this 67-foot piece of gold that you could fondle. That may seem like a close choice to some people, but not to me.
Do you own gold?
Oh yeah, I do. It's not sensible not to own gold, other than you don't know history and you don't know the economics of it. View it in terms of an alternative form of cash, and also view it as a hedge against what the other parts of your portfolio are, because there's traditional financial assets. And so in that context, as a diversifier, as a source of that, there should be a piece of that in gold, is all I'm saying.
Gold today was something that both Charlie and Warren made pretty clear they're not a big fan of. What about you?
I'm certainly in that camp. Historically, I did have some silver investments that at a time Warren actually had some silver investments. He got out fairly quickly. I stayed in and did very well on silver, but gold is a very tough one because it's so psychological. And if central banks or the IMF ever decided to take advantage, and I think countries need liquidity, hey, there's an asset that's not doing anything for the citizens, because it's purely psychological. It's not like people would say, oh, well, when it gets to $800 an ounce, people will buy 4 times as much jewelry. There's nothing that steps in as a buyer at any price. It's just purely, other people in the future will think it's worth more than it's worth today, which, if you think the world is scary and people are going to panic, I'm not saying that theory doesn't exist. We had a invention session with some people recently. As this price gets high and you look at a 10 to 20 year time frame, the supply equation will change. And so the bulls have to offset the fact that there'll be quite a bit, not in the near term, but over a period of time. And these people are claiming that they can predict gold prices out into the future, which certainly with equities you can feel like you can. Well, there you have to understand the innovations in digital mining techniques or some new extraction techniques, which actually I think are pretty interesting, and I doubt many people factor that in.
The problem is the management of gold companies can't control their costs. Idiot management. I interview every gold CEO. They come into the CBC or they come on the Langolier Exchange. I ask the same question to all of them. Give me one reason I should own your stock and not the gold you mine. Because I show them his chart, I show them the price of gold, and they are ugly. You'd rather own gold. Never own the miner, own the gold. You know, the definition of you're a bad person on earth is you go to hell and you run a gold mine.
Okay, Kevin, tell me, why do you like gold?
I like gold because, in a way, it's a stabilizer. It's an insurance policy. I've owned gold for decades, and I simply have a 5% weighting. I look at it quarterly. When it becomes more than 5%, I sell into the strength, and when it weakens, I buy into the weakness. It's just a stabilizer. It's the only security I own that doesn't pay a dividend. Physical gold, I go hug at night.